Okay, so last market structure is oligopoly. So we started with perfect competition and monopolistic competition, and we said that those were relatively competitive. We then looked at monopoly and said, well, different types of monopoly and so on, but we said that in principle that's going to be uncompetitive. Yeah, and in between, there is then oligopoly. So what's an oligopoly? Oli, the word simply means a few. So an oligopoly is simply a market dominated by a few large firms. And this, however, is the first market structure that's kind of genuinely complex, because these firms, classically in an oligopoly, they are what's called interdependent, and we'll come on to that in a little bit. But what it means is that there's no necessarily one right price and output, because the way in which, if I change my price, you'll probably change yours, which means that I may need to change mine again, and then I've got to think about how you're going to do that, and so on and so forth. And that takes us down a variety of avenues that we can explore. But what do we mean? What do we mean by a market that is dominated by a few large firms? I mean, and this is primarily, of course, the real world. Most markets are dominated by a few big firms. But what does it mean to say it's dominated? How are we going to measure that degree of dominance? What we're looking for is the interest is how concentrated is the market. And concentrated, the word concentrated refers to the power within that market. So is the power concentrated in the hands of a few firms? If it is, then we've probably got an oligopoly, and a concentrated market, therefore, is one with a few large firms. So oligopolies, and obviously monopolies, are concentrated markets, because the power is concentrated in the hands of a few. So, an interest, but obviously some markets are more concentrated than others. Some have a greater degree of dominance by the big firms than others. So how are we gonna measure that? What we tend to look at is what are known as concentration ratios, and the standard one that you're going to come across is what's called the N firm concentration ratio, where N is simply a number. A very common one is the 4 firm concentration ratio. And this is, it sounds hard, but it's one of the easiest things in the world. Because, you can also have the 3 firm, or the 5 firm, or the 2 firm, or the 7 firm concentration ratio. But the 4 firm is a very common one. And all it does is it simply adds up the market shares of the 4 largest firms. If the 4 largest firms have a very big percentage of the market, then it's pretty concentrated. If they have a small percentage of the market, then it's not very concentrated. We look at some examples from around now. We take the 4. Let's take, say, broadband first of all in the UK. As checking earlier, the 4 biggest firms are BT, Sky, Virgin, and TalkTalk. BT has 33% of the market, Sky 23%. This was kind of 2024. Virgin 20%, and TalkTalk 10%. There's then Vodafone is the next biggest with 4, but the 4 biggest firms then have 33, 56, 76, 80%, 86% of the market. So 4 firms have essentially close to 90% of that market. Clearly, that's a market that's dominated by a few large firms. If we take the UK supermarket market, your big ones are Tesco, Sainsbury's the next biggest, Asda is the next biggest, and is it Lidl? No, Aldi. Aldi is the next biggest. Tesco has 27% of the market, Sainsbury's 15%, Asda 13%, and Aldi 10%. So to work out the 4 firm concentration ratio, all I'm going to do is add those four numbers together: 27, 42, 55, 65%. 4 firms have 65% of the consumers in the supermarket market. So it's concentrated, but not as concentrated as broadband. If we take cars, then this is less concentrated still. It's probably still an oligopoly. Yeah, there are a few firms that dominate. But the four biggest firms here, they don't have as much as you would think. Yeah, so VW are the biggest four, although this varies quite a bit because they're all quite close together. The biggest four in the UK are VW, Ford, Audi, and BMW, including Mini. VW 8.5%, Ford 7.6% of the market, Audi 7.2%, BMW 5.8%. So it drops off slightly after Audi, but you've then got 13, 20, 20.6, and 20. Try again. 8, 14, 22, 27, 28, 29.1%. Yeah, that's your four firm concentration ratio. So that one's heading. I mean, it isn't monopolistic competition, but it's heading in that direction. So broadband, very, very concentrated market. Cars, much less concentrated. So that's the standard one. As a kind of optional bonus, there is another concentration ratio that you don't really need to know anything about, but you might be interested. It's called the Herfindahl-Hirschman Index, and double N no, and for that reason, it's generally called the HHI, the Herfindahl-Hirschman Index. And it tries to get around a problem with the four firm concentration ratio. Imagine we have two markets, A and B. And in market A, the top four firms have 20% each. Yeah. And then there's some smaller firms, in market B, one firm has 50%, and then the next three have 10%. In both cases, the four firm concentration ratio is 80%. Four firms have 80% of the market. But you would clearly be much more concerned about market B than market A. What the Herfindahl-Hirschman Index does is it takes the market share of every firm and then squares it and then adds it all together to give you a number. And what you'll find is that this overweights or gives a very high weight to firms with a big market share. It does it for all the firms in the market, which obviously I can't be bothered to do. If we just did it for the top four to compare how the HH index for A and the HH index for B would start off differing, 20 squared is 400. 400 times 4 in this case is 1600. Or sometimes they'll square they'll do it as a proportion. So they'll do it as like 0.2 squared and so on. But I'm going to do it this way. Whereas if we do this one, it's 50 squared plus 10 squared plus 10 squared plus 10 squared. That's 2,500. That's a total of 2,800. In the US, this one's used more commonly. Once you're over 2,500, then this is viewed as quite a highly concentrated market. So whereas that one, 20, 20, 20, 20 under the HH index wouldn't be seen as a particularly big problem, this one would be seen as more problematic. You don't need to know that, but just thought you might be interested.